What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is your review for the Real World Homecoming New Orleans season. Well, this is technically a season 3 because it's the third homecoming, but it's the New Orleans, so it's episode 4, whatever. So we're still having this argument about what happened the night that Juliet got drunk, and Tokyo and Melissa are still trying to get Julie to understand that words mean things and that what she's saying is dangerous, and she's creating this narrative. And then Melissa calls her out about what they overheard in the hot tub with her trying to create a show, and she basically admitted it. She was like, well, I mean, I was bored, and I told my husband that I was bored. Like, I don't want to be the star of the show. Like, please, y'all do something so that y'all aren't the star of the show. And then, let me tell you, Mr. Danny, how you piss me off. So Danny is going to chime in, and Danny's going to be like, well, I do understand where Julie's coming from the point of view of being forced to make a decision. Like, I wasn't ready to leave. Sir, you not being ready to leave, because we saw the footage. They showed you bunned up with the man that came up to you and talked about how you made him, watching your season. We saw y'all bunned up. That's cool. You know what? Get his phone number. Y'all check out. You can catch up with him another time. But you wanting to stay at the club because you were having a good time and you were meeting people and you found somebody that maybe you could be interested in getting to know better, it's totally different than what Julie ass was doing, where her ass was sloppy ass drunk and falling all over the place, and security asking y'all to take her ass home. So we're not going to equate the two, and we're not going to, you putting your little 2 cents in, it was unneeded. You ain't had nothing to say about none of the rest of it, so don't add your 2 cents about that, okay? Then Julie is going to do what y'all know how I feel about them white woman tears. I told y'all before, empires have fallen behind white woman tears. So now she wants to turn it into, well, I just can't be who I am, and fine, I just won't be myself because I'm not being appreciated and respected for who I am. And then she got ready to cry. And let me tell you something, Melissa did the same thing I would have done. Baby, Melissa picked up that purse. And Melissa said, this is where I exit the conversation. Because what I'm not getting ready to do is I'm not getting ready to sit here and allow you to turn this on you and make yourself to be the victim, and we're the big bad wolf. And the one thing, Melissa said, you're not going to ruin my private life after this. And I think what, in the moment, that seemed like a out of left field statement. But then later on in the episode, you get some context to that, because Melissa got a lot of hate mail after the season for things that she should have never gotten hate mail for, like, just to be blunt about it. And so Kelly goes to check on Melissa, and Melissa explains to her, like, that whole crying, woe is me, I'm the victim. She was like, I'm not entertaining it. I'm not going to do it. And then MTV made this, they did a package, how they had to come together. And the package was about racism. And I find it very interesting that I think last week's episode, the last episode wasn't supposed to be about racism at all. It was really supposed to be about Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and about Danny's journey with Paul. And then the episode before that was about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Like, they planned out these packages of which they want the topics to be, but because of this whole situation at the club, it turned into a whole racial topic that I don't even think MTV thought was going to happen. And so now this day was supposed to be about race, and it's almost like we're exhausted about, when I say we, not me, but the roommates exhausted about talking about race because they've already had these deep conversations about race up until this point. But neither here nor there. They showed a package, and it is so interesting to see these things play out through a 2022 lens, because I too was a lot younger when this season came on. One, I don't remember everything. So some of these packages, I'm like, oh damn, I didn't remember that. This package, I remembered some of it, but I didn't remember everything. But they were talking about racism. And they were talking about when they did the swamp tour, because they were redoing the swamp tour. And they were talking about when they went on the swamp tour, how the guy, mind you, this was 2000. So we're not talking about 1970. 2000, the man called the types of birds that were flying over the swamp, he called them some type of nigger bird, like red-beaked nigger bird. And Melissa, rightly so, had a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A very specific reaction. I don't know. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's escaping me now. And Jamie was very dismissive. And for the most part, the house was dismissive. about how angry she got about the man. One, the fact that the man said it so casually in front of her, like he wasn't saying anything wrong, and the fact that it was just it was used and nobody seemed to think it was an issue other than Melissa. Because let's be clear, he didn't just say that because Melissa was on the tour, because the cameras were there. That was a part of his daily tour, and I'm sure he said it a million times, right? Then they got into Julie, and I do remember some of the things that Julie said, like the fact that Julie called black people colored people, the fact that Julie had never been around black people before. I even think once they showed it, I remembered when Melissa asked her to hand her something, and she was like, "See, if you were in my house, you know, somebody in my house would have been like, what color do I look like?" Now, I don't think my reaction in 2000 is the same as my reaction is today. I remember thinking, the fuck? But, again, the one thing I will give Julie credit for, when we look back on that package, is how honest she was about it. Now, it might have been her being naive and not understanding how bad it looked. But the fact that she was like, listen, this is my reality. Like, this is how I grew up. I grew up with these casual comments being made. I grew up with these things being thrown about. Like, I grew up with these things. And this is my reality, you know? So they went on the swamp tour, and let me put a pin in that before I go any deeper, because after Melissa walked out, because I'm going to go way down left, let me tie this whole thing up. Now Julie is making it out that Melissa and Kelly are mean girls, and they're just going out of their way to be mean to her, and they're picking on her, and they're bullying her, and that they've been looking for an opportunity to come after her as if this was a premeditated thing. She told her husband she wanted to leave, but her husband told her to stay. Girl, bye. Okay, moving on. So let's get back to this. So they went on the swamp tour. Melissa didn't want to go. One, because she was like, I really don't want to be outdoors. Like, I don't want to be in the elements like that. I don't want to be around crocodiles. But, of course, the memories of the tour guide. Now, ultimately, she said, listen, I enjoyed the tour. And we had a way better tour guide, and it was a great day. We had a good time. Jamie apologizes to Melissa. He said, you know, when I saw the package, and a lot of what they're showing us is footage we didn't see. So I thought that was cool, too. He said, I see that in that moment, at that time, I was very insensitive. And I was very dismissive of your feelings. And for that, I apologize. Like, I could have handled it better. And for that, I apologize. And Melissa was like, I appreciate that. Thank you. And what we found out is that Melissa got a lot of hate mail behind she got a lot of hate mail behind that incident, because people were basically coming at her, telling her she was being too sensitive and she was doing too much and it wasn't that deep. And she was like, you know, I'm getting the hate mail for my experience, for what I went through, but I'm getting the hate mail. Which again goes back to what I think she was saying to to Julie about, you're not going to disrupt my personal life after this experience is over. Because in that moment, I feel like she was saying, like, I'm not going to allow you to turn me into the angry black woman and then everybody's going to come at me. That's not what's going to happen here. So, we find out, though, that Melissa has invited her parents, Shorty and Mercy, who they came on the original season, but because of editing, they edited out their whole visit, which I don't know why. Like, in hindsight, I really wish we could have heard the producer's reason for not including that, because I thought that was important. One, I think it's always important we get to see people's family and see where they come from. But because Melissa had this very, interesting background, she was half Filipino, half black. Her dad's black, mom Filipino, like growing up in that double culture. Like, I thought that would have been a great thing to explore, but neither here nor there. But she hadn't seen her parents since pre-COVID, so that also adds to it. Now, first of all, let me say her parents look good, okay? They look good. And, again, I keep getting ahead of myself. So they're having this whole conversation on race. And at first, Julie was like, well, I don't want to be the center of attention. I feel like I'm the center of this again. I feel like we're right back on the white girl, yada, yada, yada. Which, in that instance, Julie, you were right. Because a lot of that package was around you and how you walked into the house very naive and ignorant of all things black. So in that case, it was a lot of it was about you. And Julie was very resistant at first, right? She was very resistant at first, but then eventually she said, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. And she used the example of Tokyo. When they first got to the house, he picked up the suitcase, but he wasn't sure if it was his or not. And he said, Julie, do you mind watching me while I open up this suitcase? And she was like, why? And he was like, well, I just, I don't want it to be I don't want no shit. If I open up the suitcase and it's not mine and something come up missing, I don't want nobody to be like, the black man did it. And she said, I didn't understand, but I see now. She said, I've never had to worry about that. Like, that's not even a thought process in my mind that you have to worry about. And David was like, and that's it. That's what I need you to see. That's what I need you to understand, that the experience is different. I had a big fight with one of my coworkers one time. There is this huge, white people don't understand that they have privilege just for the fact of being white. They think that word privilege means that they were rich, or that they grew up in a great environment, or that they had certain advantages. No, you have privilege simply because of the color of your skin, because there are things that you never have to worry about simply because you are white. I'll never forget Chelsea Handler. She's a comedian. If you don't know who she is, she's a white comedian. And I saw her in an interview she wrote a book a couple of years ago. And she talked about, as a teenager, maybe late teens, early 20s, getting pulled over by a police officer for driving drunk. She said, one, I was. She said, but I was so belligerent to that cop. I was so disrespectful to that cop. I cussed him out. I yelled at him. She said, and he let me go with a warning. I didn't get a ticket. She said, I was absolutely drunk. She said, but even if I hadn't been drinking, my behavior should have warranted that something happened. But not only did I not get a ticket, I was let off with a warning. She said, and I look at a George Floyd, and she said, it wasn't until the incidents over the last couple of years that I truly understood my privilege. And I think back on that moment, and I think back on that experience, and I say, the fact that it never occurred to me that I should be afraid of the police. It never occurred to me that talking to that cop crazy, that even though I was wrong as 2 left feet because I absolutely was drunk, it never occurred to me. And then I see a George Floyd or a Sandra Bland simply making an illegal, changing lanes cost her life. It's crazy. And so that is what I need white people to understand, is that you have the privilege because you are white. That is it. That is all. Anyway, I went left again. But in that moment, I do think Julie started understanding it. And I think Jamie understands it. And unfortunately, sometimes, and people push back on me when I say this, and maybe it's because I am a teacher that I don't have a problem with it, but I absolutely don't have a problem with teaching. I don't. And here's the reason why. Because if you don't teach, and I understand people say, well, it's out there and you can learn, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But here's the thing. That's like telling somebody, in my opinion, that's like telling somebody, well, trigonometry, there are videos on it, there are tutorials, you can go buy a book, you can learn about trigonometry, but they've never ever taken a math class. They have no reference point. They have nowhere to start. They have no understanding of concepts. So to tell somebody, well, there's Google out there, you can learn about racism, you can go watch some documentaries, there's no reference point. And I just, this is me. This is me. And I know people going to disagree with me, and that's fine. But for me, I'm one of those people that feels like if you are asking for help and you genuinely want to learn, I'll teach you. I'll teach you. Somebody like a Julie who never grew up around black people, her only exposure to black people was what she saw on TV. Imagine 20 years ago now. Imagine what Julie grew up watching on TV about black people. Imagine what she saw on the news about black people. I mean, hell, she was still calling us colored and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. She grew up in a church that told her that black was wrong. Right? So, anyway, again, I keep going off on left field. Y'all get it. Y'all understand what I'm saying. Moving on. So, Melissa's parents come, and it totally lightens the mood. Melissa actually went and apologized to Julie because she said, you know what? I was a little rough. I was a little hard, and I was a little rough. And she went and apologized to Julie. She said, listen, I get passionate. You know, I get a little excitable sometimes. You know, and I've recognized that earlier today I was probably on 20. And so I think that cracked the ice a little bit with her and Julie. Later on, we see that them actually reminiscing and remembering certain things about when they were in California together. Some fun experiences. They laughed a little bit. They hugged. Her parents hugged Julie. So it was a moment. We learned a little bit about Melissa's family. She's married. He's in a band. She's got 3 kids, and they've been together for like 10 years. And she seems really, really happy. So, it was great. I enjoyed it, you guys. It was great. It was a good episode. So we'll see what happens next week. Next week it looks like it gets a little deep as far as Matt and his personal beliefs when it comes to homosexuality, honey. We will see. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.